Britain is cooked. 30 years of malgovernment, ideological derangement, and relentless self-sabotage have ruined us. We are careering towards quasi-bankruptcy, our international reputation shot, our society fractured, our citizens impoverished, unhealthy and demoralized, our public sphere strewn with litter, and our institutions discredited. Crime and disorder are at intolerable levels. Those who can are fleeing. Little of value is ever built, and certainly not enough homes or infrastructure. Our energy costs are the highest in the world, and blackouts loom. Goods, services, housing, transport, and healthcare are rationed by government fiat, and congestion, overregulation, bureaucracy, and propaganda grind down anybody with any ambition, courage, or creativity. We are craving a hard reset, but Keir Starmer, our worst prime minister in 50 years, is doubling down on the toxic mix of socialism, class warfare, uncontrolled and often low-grade migration, confiscatory taxation, net zero extremism, regulatory zealotry, and woke nihilism that has brought Britain to its knees. He is the ultimate non-player character, unable to imagine a different way forward, convinced of his righteousness as Britain races towards fiscal Armageddon. The scale of the catastrophe appears belatedly to be dawning on Rachel Reeves. The Chancellor is bigging up a trade deal with China, signaling her support for expanding Heathrow and seeking to speed up infrastructure projects. Such granular initiatives make sense, but don't amount to a coherent plan, let alone a diagnosis of our pathologies. They are panic moves from a clueless administration whose tax raids and attacks on using us have trashed the economy. We have been living beyond our means since the financial crisis, convinced that we can go on spending on the NHS, benefits, and triple-locked pensions while embracing every policy guaranteed to deliver reduced growth. We have vilified capitalism, risk-taking, money-making, the rich and bankers, and embraced virtue signaling and wokeism. Many of our fellow citizens believe that the state owes them a living, yet the maths don't add up. Zero growth in GDP, our new self-inflicted normal, combined with 2 to 3% growth in public spending, leads to IMF bailouts. Some hope socialism could work if combined with a massive increase in the labor supply. Yet the desperate, anti-democratic experiment with extreme levels of migration has failed. In social as well as economic terms, it hasn't boosted productivity. GDP per capita is falling, and many of the recent rivals will end up taking out more from the welfare state that they will pay in tax. Barring a miracle, the UK is at most 2 years away from a 1970s-style fiscal implosion. We are facing what Ray Dalio calls a debt spiral even before Donald Trump forces us to spend more on defense or imposes tariffs on UK exports if we persist in waging tax and regulatory war on US companies. The great lie of British politics is that there is no alternative, that all parties should be the same, that the Labour-Lib Dem Tory consensus of the past few decades is the only sensible or moral way forward. Trump 2.0 has exposed the idiocy of this approach. The president's agenda for renewal is astonishingly radical and may establish him as one of the most consequential presidents. Britain's only hope is to copy almost all of his reforms, minus the protectionism against friendly states or the attempts at grabbing new territory. Trump has signed hundreds of executive orders or other proclamations in his first few days. He has announced a massive expansion of every kind of energy production. He understands that growth since the Industrial Revolution has been driven by abundant cheap fuel, and low-cost electricity is essential for AI. Data centers and tech firms. Starmer's hopes to boost AI in the UK are doomed for that very reason. Trump wants to mine and drill and exploit natural resources. He is pulling out of the Paris Agreement, which is ignored by emerging economies, and terminating federal laws forcing the adoption of electric cars. He supports clean tech, but only in the context of choice and market competition, not top-down green central planning. He has imposed a moratorium on new regulations of all kinds and wants to introduce a 1 in 10 out rule. Reeves' recent China trade announcement amounted to $600 million over 5 years. Trump has already unveiled an AI private sector investment project worth $500 billion. The U.S. under Trump is entering a new boom, led by machine learning, driverless cars, massive medical progress, and the commercial exploitation of space. He is abandoning or reversing all of Biden's anti-billionaire, anti-Silicon Valley measures. His strategy is to outgrow America's own fiscal woes and unfounded liabilities, and he is determined to entrench a pro-growth tax system. He is pro-legal skilled migration, but is launching the greatest crackdown in history against illegal migrant and South American gangs. He wants to shrink the size of the U.S. state, break the blob, and force civil servants to work for, rather than against, elected governments. He has banned working from home for federal employees. In recent developments, the relationship between UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Donald Trump has been marked by diplomatic engagements and policy challenges. Following President Trump's inauguration, Prime Minister Starmer extended his congratulations, emphasizing the enduring special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States. This gesture underscores Starmer's intent to maintain strong bilateral ties amidst shifting political landscapes. However, certain policy decisions have introduced complexities. Notably, Prime Minister Starmer's agreement to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius has been criticized by figures within the Trump administration. Robert Wilkie, a member of President Trump's transition team, described the move as calamitous, suggesting it could jeopardize the long-standing defense cooperation between the two nations. Concerns have been raised about potential Chinese influence in the region following the transfer, which might impact the strategic security of both UK and US military assets. Additionally, Prime Minister Starmer's response to President Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement has attracted domestic criticism. By refraining from condemning the decision, Starmer faced backlash from opposition parties, who labeled his stance as overly deferential. Despite this, Downing Street reaffirmed its commitment to the Paris Agreement and the importance of collaboration with international partners on climate issues. These events highlight the nuanced and evolving nature of UK-US relations under the leadership of Prime Minister Starmer and President Trump, as both leaders navigate their national interest within the broader context of global diplomacy. He has suspended prior to sacking every single-day HR federal employee. It's an enormous shift, a true revolution. Trump also wants to rescue students from critical race theory, which has encouraged anti-Semitism and anti-Asian racism. One order instructs the federal government to investigate day at institutions of higher education with endowments over $1 billion. Another demands the expulsion from the U.S. of anti-American extremists, including students. We can but imagine how strong the USA could become if its best and brightest ceased being indoctrinated in nihilistic ideas and were encouraged instead to think freely. The ideological gulf and difference in prospects between the UK and the US has never been so great. Britain has a choice. We can double down on our mistakes and race towards miserable irrelevance, or we can swallow our pride and learn from Trump. Which will it be?